Who's that coming down the track?
Who's that coming down the track?
It's a mean machine in red and black.
Mean machine in red and black.
Ain't nothing finer in the land.
Ain't nothing finer in the land.
Them drunk obnoxious Georgia fans.
Them drunk obnoxious Georgia fans.
Go, go!
Go,
Go, go!
What's up, y'all? This is John and Caleb back for another episode of the Nothing Finer podcast. What's up, y'all? This is John and Caleb back for another episode of the Nothing Finer podcast. All right, got it fixed. If you're watching on YouTube and you're wondering why the video was not there, that is because something happened in the software and the video just disappeared. So we'll have that figured out for the next episode. But we're excited to be here. We are much more excited than we were last night.
No kidding.
We are talking about the week that was in college football because it sure was a week.
It was. Lots of great football games, one of which I wish was not as great as it was, just, in terms of entertainment value.
Yeah, but, outside of the game, how you been?
Pretty good. We'll talk about the game mood in a little bit, but outside of the game, things were pretty good. Got a great day of college football yesterday, which was always fun. It was our first Saturday in town of the football season, where we just didn't really have anything else going on. So I actually did just get to kind of enjoy the football throughout the day, which was nice. Had our whole spread. Had some drinks. It was good. And so it probably put me in a better mood today than I deserve to be. But helps that today was a pretty good day too. So how about you?
Good. It's not even hot in Savannah right now, but I'm wearing a cutoff because I legitimately finished cooking dinner, shoved it down my face, and walked in here. And when you're standing over a stove for an hour, it's hot.
Yeah, I feel you.
No, I'm good. Got some water with me tonight because I probably drank too much yesterday. So I'm just going to not drink tonight. We'll see how the rest of the week goes.
Fair enough. Yeah, I've got a healthy protein shake smoothie here.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, because last couple of days have not been on the healthy eating. So we're like, well, we might as well start somewhere. Let's start during your podcast recording with a healthy smoothie.
All right, so we are doing Calling the Dogs off the top tonight. We got quite a few voicemails, as we do for any game that's closer than we want it to be. So we're going to start now, and Caleb will hear all the voicemails tomorrow. All right, so here's Calling the Dogs. And if you want to do Calling the Dogs, I'll repeat the number again in just a minute. But it is 912-514-0707, and that's to leave us voicemails before the game, during the game, after the game, middle of the week, drunk, sober, half asleep, doesn't matter. Call us and tell us your thoughts, but here are the thoughts from this past week.
Greatest LSU fan here, and I am pissed the fuck off. Why are we playing South Carolina like there is no urgency? Fucking sitting here just playing fucking money ball at this point, just throwing some up, hoping it comes down. Guess what? Interception. They're running our defense, making us look like we're out here playing Pee Wee League football. They ain't even got their scrambling quarterback in. We have freaking Robbie Ashford against us, and he isn't doing shit. And guess what LSU's doing? Fucking just being LSU. We ain't had defense since we didn't have defense with Burrow. We had a underrated, but we didn't have a defense. Now we're sitting here letting us bust do everything, and then he slips up. Harold Perkins is the only name we have on defense. Major Burns is a big-ass bust. I'm sick of this shit. I don't know how to feel. We're sitting here with, I think, right at 2 minutes left, Kyron Lacey just could have caught a fucking pass if he would have used two hands. What's he do? Oh, I'm a Odell Beckham this hoe. I'm just sick of this shit. I don't know how to feel as an LSU fan. Is it getting better? Is it getting worse? Brian Kelly needs to get the fuck on. We were better with Coach O. I can understand half the shit he was saying, but we're better off. Hey, yo.
This is Josh. I'm drunk. And I'm happy. Goddamn dogs. Like, a game like this isn't surprising. We haven't experienced one quite, this frustrating and inept seeming in a long time. But it happened. It's Kentucky. We brought into weird situations with these guys. It's fine. Yeah, I don't know. Gotta get in Carson's head and give him some big dick energy, because the guy he walks out there sometimes just looking scared. I don't get it. But I do have to, take some accountability for the game tonight. I didn't start drinking until halftime, so that's on me. But I got some Classic City Lager, the appropriate beverage, right? Wasn't pretty, but got the job done. Go Dogs.
Well, y'all, it's the morning after, and to be quite honest, I'm still really disappointed about that game. Just everything seemed to be going the absolute worst it has in quite a bit. And while I secretly hope that this is Missouri 2022 or whatever the game that was, I'm very, very concerned about this team right now, especially with Alabama and Texas coming up rather soon. It's a bit of a mash unit, so that doesn't help anything, but good Lord, they looked awful this week. And honestly, didn't help that. Don't use this one.
Hey, I'm going to take credit for this performance. At least 69% of it. Did you see things? Shake my beard into a Superman shoe? That's not me. That's not the dog. I don't know why I would do that. I also didn't drink all the game. Did that Friday. That's the big problem. And also, I didn't wear Georgia yesterday. It is 69% my fault for that performance. That will never happen again.
All right, guys, that is all of this week's Calling the Dogs.
I cannot wait to hear those back, because some of the faces and laughter you were making out there, I'm like, these have got to be good. I'm normally the guy who talks people off the ledge after a game like this, and I'm guessing without one of those, it's wild this week.
Yeah, no, it's everybody actually took credit for it. Everybody that called in said it was partially their fault. I will say, I'll take a little bit of blame for it too. I wear the exact same outfit for every game, and I was like, I'm just gonna wear different gray shorts today.
John, no.
And then I was like, man, I'm at home. I'm not gonna put tennis shoes on. I'm gonna sit here in my Crocs. And I will say, I went and changed. Me and Kelsey have a little ritual we do in close games. We're 4 for 4 on wins in close games with this thing we do. So, we only pull it out. It's like break glass in case of emergency kind of thing. But I mean, legitimately seconds after they got the touchdown. So,
well, there we go. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not saying I'm responsible, but Mike took 69% credit. Josh took some credit, so I'll take 6.9%.
Hey, that works. Yeah, it can't be our fault this time. We actually had our game day snacks ready to go before kickoff this week. So that was our big thing last year that would get us to the slow starts and get the other team a touchdown lead, as we wouldn't have our game day snacks ready in time, if you remember.
Yeah.
And once we got them ready, but now, yeah, can't blame that. Must have been one of y'all. So I'm taking 0% blame and 0% credit for the eventual win as well.
But as we know by now, Georgia did not cover the 22-point spread, and the under was absolutely smashed. This could have been an Iowa game under and possibly have hit yesterday. It was rough. It was ugly.
Yeah.
It was awful. Carson didn't really make good decisions for most of the night. Georgia lost the yardage battle, 284 to 262. Lost the time of possession battle, 35 minutes to 25 minutes. Lost the penalties battle, 9-4. But they did win the important battle of turnovers and touchdowns. Both of those.
Which that turnover was huge. It got us on the board. Obviously, the touchdown was huge. Because the defense had played so well, it just erased the lead Kentucky had been building the whole game, which is massive.
Yeah. And, just going to say it. 2 of my breakout candidates are giant reasons Georgia won that game last night.
Mm-hmm.
Damon Wilson with that fumble recovery.
Yep.
And Colby Young with 2 catches, one of which put the Dogs in position to get their only touchdown of the night.
Oh, yeah. That was huge. And, the Georgia fans, I hate to tell you that we told you so. But, Brock Vandegrift, he's that motherfucker, isn't he?
He damn sure is.
Yes, we've said a few times. And so, again, I hate saying that. There is a sect of Georgia fans who are going to be angry at me for what I'm about to say next. Guys, we won the game.
Yep.
A lot of people have been comparing this to 2022 Mizzou, and I see that comparison. To me, it looked a lot like 2007 South Carolina. And I don't know if you remember that game. We lost that game. If you
don't remember that game, go back and listen to our Jackpot series.
There we go. That's right. Y'all talked about it in pretty vivid and angry detail, if I remember correctly. So remember, we lost that game. We did not lose that game this time. Every good team has 1 or 2 of these a year that they run into and have to rise up above. There's this saying that I hate that's gone around college football social media a lot. Good teams win, great teams cover. That's what a lot of folks say. And I don't buy that. I'd rather revise that. Good teams win when they're on. Great teams win when they're off. Yeah. Georgia was sure as hell off on Saturday, but something to be said for the fact that they won. Again, not saying that they win if they play like that next time, but hopefully they don't. And, we did get the win. Can't say enough about it. I don't think this happened because Bobo is bad at play calling or something.
No.
It was a little vanilla, and I heard Kirby in the press conference say that he was trying to not do a whole lot of the big shots because he wanted the offense to have long drives because he knew so many defensive guys would have to play way more snaps than normal. Obviously, it didn't really work out that we had a bunch of long drives because of Kentucky's defense. I give them credit all day long for coming out. They played really physical. And I know that's kind of become a joke Kirby Smart buzzword lately, but they really did come out ready to punch somebody in the mouth, as did Brock Vandegrift in that offense. So I give them credit for sort of rising to the challenge. Kirby went in there and wanted to go with a game plan of out physicaling them, and Kentucky didn't really let that happen. But I'll tell you what, and I'm going to sound insane for saying this. I was not worried at any point in this game that we were going to lose.
You do sound insane for saying that.
I know, I understand, but it's just, and against Mizzou a couple of years ago, I was not like that. You can ask my wife. I was having an existential crisis sitting on my couch watching that game a couple of years ago. But I don't know. I just had a confidence that we were going to figure it out enough to win, and it was just enough, really just enough. But even if it looked like Kentucky had a chance late, I knew we were going to win. But again, like I mentioned, we obviously cannot play like that in 2 weeks and expect to beat an Alabama team that by all accounts is pretty daggone good. But some weeks all you got to do is win. And if we win that exact same way for every single game left in front of us, do you know what happens at the end of the season, John?
Well, if they win every game that way, first off, the podcast is probably over because I died. But second, they win a national championship.
Exactly. They're still the best team in the country. So I'm, you know me, I'm always the talk you off the ledge kind of guy. And so those are my takeaways from the game. But again, I do want the last thing I say about it to be, well, we still got to play better next time. Way, way better.
Yeah, and in the grand scheme of things, this game came at a very good time.
Yeah.
Not just with getting a bye week after, a lot of guys went down with injuries. Carson took a really hard fall on his non-throwing shoulder. Tyrion Ingram Dawkins went down for a bit of that game. Christian Miller went down for a bit of that game. I want to say one or two linebackers went down for a bit of that game. Half of the offensive line got tweaked at some point, including Tate Ratledge, who was carted to the locker room and came out with a pretty serious brace on his knee, and was immediately ruled out.
Yeah, which I hate it for that guy because he's dealt with some of that before, and you just hate seeing a guy that talented miss playing time.
Yeah, but not just for the injuries, but when you are curb stomping every team you play, at some point the players are going to tune out the coaches saying, "Hey, you did this wrong. You did that wrong. Here's how we can improve." When you beat Kentucky 13-12, you can have from this morning until the moment before kickoff of that Alabama game where these guys are going to be tuned in to everything you say because they realize how close it was.
Yeah. That was one thing I meant to put in here and didn't. Like, this game and that Alabama-Wisconsin game, like, I'm not saying it couldn't have gone better for us because obviously we won a better showing against Kentucky than that. But I think we now have a better chance of going back to the drawing board and really improving and coming up with a solid game plan in the next 2 weeks. Because of that and what Alabama has done, showing that they're really freaking good. Like, we can. I won't say they definitely will. We can trust Kirby Smart to get these guys ready to play in that game to the best that he can.
Yeah, no, for sure. And, one thing that I guarantee you has pissed a lot of players off is that you don't allow a touchdown through 3 games, one against the best team in the ACC over the last decade, one of which Tennessee Tech, I understand that, and one of those to a very good Kentucky team. This Kentucky team had 7 total players in the preseason All-SEC team. Very good Kentucky team.
Yeah.
And you get jumped by Texas, who gave up a touchdown to UTSA, has given up points to every team they have played this year.
Yeah. They have a super flashy offense. And don't you know a Manning is their quarterback there?
For now.
Yeah.
It's one of those things of where that pisses off every single player that saw the poll this morning.
Oh, yeah. And that, I was kind of happy with it. I said in the chat, I wished they would have put Bama above us too, just to add a little more fuel to the fire. But obviously I understand why they didn't. But again, Texas is the media darling because they throw a lot. Tennessee's the media darling because they throw a lot, provide all the exciting highlights that ESPN can draw viewers in with. But
they ain't at the end of the nobody, day, Paul.
Exactly. Yeah, we'll talk about them a little later, I'm sure. But
yeah. So we do want to highlight some guys that won't be in the awards here in a minute. But there's a lot of guys that, played well under the circumstances that don't quite, aren't going to be in the awards, but we think they deserve some recognition, especially in one of these graded out type games. Arian Smith, 2 catches for 13 yards. But that heads up play to get the Oscar Delp fumble where it bounced forward for a first down at the end of the game to take off more clock.
That was a game-saving grab.
Yeah, absolutely. Next, Colby Young, 2 catches for 20 yards. But once again, that, sideline, back shoulder, turn your body around, let the defensive back keep running. That was a Marcus Rosemy-Jack Saint type grab because he was always there, always open, in tight games when you needed him to be.
Yep.
And once again, that catch set up Georgia in a third down to get a first down on the drive they scored on. Peyton Woodring going 2 for 2 on field goals, long of 34, but he scored more points on the day than the entire offense. 6 on field goals, 1 on extra points. Without those 7 points, obviously, Georgia does not win that game.
Yeah, got to commend him on that.
Damon Wilson with the fumble recovery, and, between him and Jalen Walker, they were just in Brock's face every time he dropped back to throw a pass and just beating the hell out of him.
I'm glad you said Jalen Walker's name there, too, because I was going to bring him up if you didn't, because they were getting after him.
Yeah, and, especially after the conversation with Matt Austin a little while ago, I try to be kinder to the referees.
Yeah, it's a tough job.
It is a tough job, and the way he was talking about the shortage of referees being because of how poorly they get treated, and you don't want guys refereeing games, big games that aren't ready for it, because the guys that are ready for it left. I get it. It makes sense. Some of the penalties they called on Jalen Walker were bad.
Yeah, they were, and I think Kirby Smart tried to reference it in the press conference without really talking about it or putting any blame on the officials. I think he handled it well, but he talked about penalties are up all over the country.
Yeah,
and I think that it goes back to what you were talking about, that you just have these guys who aren't necessarily ready for these moments, but somebody's got to go out there and call the game.
Yep. And I will say the referees were bad on the other side of the ball too, because in that offensive face mask that their tight end got called on, it was 100% a face mask on Georgia too. That should have been offsetting and give them another shot at the second down.
Yeah, that opening, that first punt Kentucky made, where they called Kentucky for the hold, and he and Dominic Lovett were just barreling each other into the ground. I feel like both sides should have gotten an unsportsmanlike instead of just Kentucky on that one.
I agree. The hold was just Kentucky.
Yeah.
Them exchanging hip tosses all the way to the sideline that was wrestling practice with both people involved.
Yeah, Vince McMahon has given somebody a phone call after that game.
Oh, I guarantee it. And speaking of Dominic Lovett, leading the team in receiving on Saturday night, 6 catches for 89 yards, an average of 14.8 yards per catch. Almost a disastrous mistake with the ball that bounced after hitting the turf.
Luckily, it did hit the turf. And I made note of this, I think, in the chat. Dominic Lovett is very, very slowly but surely becoming the sort of go-to security blanket guy for Carson Beck.
Oh, yeah.
Like, he's becoming a guy, when the play breaks down or when he's taking a little more time, he's looking to Dom Lovett, and Dom Lovett is making something happen, which is good to see, because I don't want to say Carson Beck needs that. He's never really needed that. When his security blankets were out last year, he did just fine without them. But any quarterback will tell you it's good to have a reliable guy who they know they can get the ball to.
Yeah, and a guy that you're just innately on the same page with. Like, if Carson rolls right, Dom looks back, sees it, and goes to a spot in the coverage where he has an opportunity to make a play.
Right. It's huge.
Branson Robinson with the team's only touchdown, 2 carries for 5 yards. He got 2.
He had the one that mattered. Yeah. He got he ran over a battering ram Branson, running over a couple of people on the way into making sure he got those points. That sort of put your head down and get it was exactly what we needed at that moment to take the lead there at the end of the game. Yeah.
And I do want to say Kentucky's field. Kentucky's field is not like Tennessee's in the sense that you go there, you expect injuries. Kentucky switched from natural to artificial turf this season. That's why they did not have a spring game. Georgia had a total of 5 linemen between the offense and defense go down with lower leg injuries. And Carson Beck has been hit harder on a natural surface and not come up with a shoulder injury. It is time. With the technology all over, if they can have real grass in Arizona inside of a dome, in Arizona, it's time to ban artificial surfaces.
Yeah. You're telling me that Arizona has access to better field maintenance resources than Kentucky?
The bluegrass state.
Exactly.
It's bluegrass for the music, but
still, there's a lot of grass.
I'll say, having lived in Kentucky, I am fairly certain there would be some farmers that would go take care of that grass for free.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Get some goats out there, figure it out. But
yeah, like I get it. You get the cool designs in the grass. You get the different colors between the 5-yard line marks. When there are more injuries on your field, suddenly after you switch surfaces, it's probably the surface.
right.
Ask why teams hate playing in Atlanta or Detroit or any of the other stadiums that have rashes of injury every year in the NFL, and everyone says ban artificial surfaces.
Yeah, it's time. It is absolutely time.
You know what else it's time for?
I believe it's time for the weekly awards.
It is time for the weekly awards.
Very hard to pick out awards on a week like this.
It is. But, you know, me and you, we talked about it for a few hours through the course of last night and this morning. We think we've got a very, very good lineup here for you guys. Starting with the offensive player of the game. Trevor Etienne led the team in rushing, 19 carries for 79 yards, averaging 4.2 yards per carry, one catch for 11 yards. He was making gaps where there weren't any. He was taking tiny gaps and busting through them. Without him in the game, getting yards that really were not there and always falling forwards, Georgia probably loses that game.
And he was really the only guy on the field, it seems like, for both teams who was really keeping the ball secure, which was really important in this game. On those drives you're talking about, you know, we already talked about the touchdown drives, but those field goal drives, which again we also needed to win the game in the end, we got into field goal range because Trevor Etienne was so consistent on the day. He is proving to really be a boon for this offense so far in the season. We've seen him sort of tear up a team who was lesser than, but it's good to see that when it's time to really go out there and pop somebody in the mouth and try to get something going, face some adversity, he's a guy you can rely on.
Yeah, and I think his ability, his willingness and ability to run between the tackles has impressed and shocked most Georgia fans that were paying attention to what he did at Florida. Because that's not really the kind of runner he was at Florida, and then he comes in this year and he's like, oh, you got 8 inches between the right guard and the right tackle? Cool, I'm gonna get 5 yards.
Yeah, it's really been impressive, and it just goes to show Kirby knows what he's looking for, and it's not always something that shows up on a play-to-play basis. And this goes back to the way he recruits high school as well. He saw something in Ladd McConkey, for example, that no one else was seeing, and he is making millions and making plays in the NFL right now.
Defensive player of the game. This is an odd one. This is going to surprise a lot of you guys. We went through 3 or 4 different guys before
many of whom we mentioned earlier. Yes. But this was the right call.
We got Brett Thorson. Now, Brett's a punter, not defense. I understand that. But without Brett putting the Kentucky offense deep more times than not, if he had not put them deep, they were probably able to score touchdowns. Brett had 6 punts for 297 yards and averaged 49.5. He put 3 inside of the 20 and 2 touchbacks. One that should have been down at the 1. The guys that were down there to cover that punt just didn't have their eyes on the ball at the right time.
Yeah.
And the only quote-unquote bad punt he had, he was backed up punting from his own end zone and still got them on their side of the field.
Yeah, it was still a 50-yard punt. It wasn't even that bad. It just went out of bounds before it probably would have in other circumstances. But yeah, I mean, field position was a big part of this game, as it often is. And Brett did a phenomenal job. There was one play where the ball was bouncing, and I was like, this dude for Kentucky is about to pick this thing up and actually return it, and then it just bounces out of bounds right in front of him, basically. And I'm like, this kid is unreal. I don't know what he does to work it out, but Brett, we are so glad you are on the team. I hope you don't have to punt 6 times every game.
Yep, I agree with Carson. I would much rather just see you make jokes than see you punt.
It's good to know that when we need you to, you are going to set us up for success.
Yeah, and I will say one thing that I noticed, that scuffle with Dominic Lovett on the Kentucky sideline. Brett Thorson was the first Georgia player not named Dominic Lovett in there about to throw hands.
Oh yeah, he was ready to go. For all the time he talked on his podcast last week about how he'd rather not get physical. He'd rather not try to go out and hit somebody or run. He was going after it though. He'll do it for the team, which I love about the guy.
And this is not meant to be negative, but for a punter, he thick.
Oh yeah.
I have no doubt he could lay somebody out if necessary. And from Australia and with a mullet, he's thrown a few hands in his day.
He's the most perfect man I've ever seen in my life. But I have socks on.
Perfect. And for the
Walker went 16 yards. He drove right over Orange Church, just driving and running with those big thighs. My God, a freshman.
Award of the week. We've got Monroe Freeling. Played left tackle for quite a bit of the game. The team was shuffling guys through on the O-line due to some injuries from the turf field. And honestly, just some pretty shitty play. Just being honest there. But yeah. Monroe Freeling got the most snaps he has had in his 2-year career at Georgia, redshirted last season, and he replaced a guy, Ernest Green, who had given up 1 sack in his entire career at Georgia up until Saturday night. And towards the end of the game, they were running to the left side behind Monroe Freeling, showing just what he can be. And, the entire backup line that ended up playing, because you did have Monroe Freeling left tackle. I don't remember who's played at left guard. Dylan Fairchild played almost the entire game at left guard. Yeah. And you had Jared Wilson, who's in his 3rd game as a starting center for this year. And then Micah Morris, who is the backup center, playing right guard once Tate went down. And they all played extremely well. You're playing against a phenomenal Kentucky defensive line. And not only that, you're playing against an inside linebacker that is an all-SEC guy that knows your offense because he was on your team for 3 years.
Pretty good, to be honest with you. Pretty daggum good.
And the Lumberjack Award of the night, and I know these guys didn't have the best game with giving up 170 rushing yards, but the defensive front was dealing with a ton of injuries before and during this game. Michael's still out from that dirty hit in week 1.
Tyrion Maffa, you're still on my list.
Do what?
Said Maffa is still on my list, by the way.
Good.
I don't know what that list does, but he's on it.
It's the naughty list. He's getting coal from Santa Claus this year. We're sending the letter in the mail.
Yeah, take that, Phil.
Tyrion Ingram Dawkins going down for a while in this game. Also, Tyrion Ingram Dawkins is tied for 17th in the country for tackles for loss right now.
He is our guy in the backfield.
Yeah. Christian Miller going down for a bit in this game, but you had Big Nas, who played almost every defensive snap in this game as a 6'6", 330-pound dude. That is extremely impressive.
Mm-hmm.
Raylan Wilson, who played on the line quite a bit with Michael being out. Jalen Walker, Damon Wilson getting more playing time. Xavier McLeod with his first snaps in red and black.
That was good to see.
Gabe Harris, Samuel Mpemba, and all those guys just made sure that Brock felt them on every play. There's a number of plays that I can think of off the top of my head. Big Nas chasing guys down on the sideline, which if you're playing, 50 snaps as a defensive lineman? or
I think he
more.
got close to 70.
Yeah, if you're playing 70 snaps as a 6'6", 330-pound man, and you still have the ability to run the almost 27 yards from the middle of the field to the sideline and hit the shit out of somebody, you're putting in work.
Yeah. And I got to say, on the defense, you talk about they never quit chopping. They pulled it together. The whole defense really did. I mean, they're dealing with all of these injuries. They are dealing with Kentucky offense that is doing everything in its power to get white hot. They are struggling at times to tackle. There were plays where everybody not named Dan Jackson looked like they didn't know how to tackle. But
there were plays where everybody not named Dalen Everett could cover a receiver.
yeah, that's that. Yeah, he looked a lot like 2023 Dalen Everett at times. All of that, they still didn't give up a touchdown.
0 touchdowns through 180 minutes of football against Clemson, Tennessee Tech, I understand, and a very good Kentucky team where they have their quarterback knows Georgia extremely well, played against this defense for 3 years, and the quarterback of their defense knows this offense very well and played against it for 3 years.
Yeah, and plus dealing with everything that we've already talked about. I was very impressed with the effort of the defense. Not, I've been impressed with the talent and effort of the defense all year. But again, you see the character of somebody when you see them backed up into a corner and see how they respond to that. And this defense responded to that incredibly well. And I hope they don't get backed up into a corner again. But again, it's there's a lot more trust here that if that does happen, these are the guys who can make the plays when they need to be made.
Yeah, I would much prefer they were backing people into corners.
True.
All right, moving on to LSU at South Carolina. Man, this game was just absolutely wild. South Carolina looked like the better team for the majority of this game. Offensively, defensively. And I think if Lenore Sellers stays healthy, South Carolina probably wins this game by 2 touchdowns.
Probably.
LSU did not even know there was a question to be answered, and the question was Lenore Sellers, and they were confused.
Indeed. They were not confused once Robbie Ashford came in, but Robbie Ashford is the guy who will start running the ball and then will just gently place it right in front of the Georgia defender to pick up. So we knew there wasn't a whole lot for him.
Yeah, no, every time Robbie Ashford sees a football field, all I can think of is the game in 2022. The fake Georgia fans that own the season tickets to our right, and I say fake because every single game they bring fans of the opposing team to the game and sit them next to me. They were Auburn fans directly to my right, and the guy that was sitting on the end next to me, to be honest, I talked to him during the game, and he's like, dude, I've never watched football before. He's like, I'm a foreign exchange student, been here for a few months. He's like, this girl I'm dating wanted to come, and her family has tickets, so I'm here.
That's fair enough. Should have told him, oh, well, don't worry. Robbie Ashford's really, 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 really good.
But during that game, I kept a running tally in my head of, does Robbie Ashford hit 33% completion percentage? Fun fact, he did not in that game. And his girlfriend was very upset every time I would call out his current completion percentage after a game. All the Georgia fans in the section thought it was great.
Of course, it was. I thought the game was great too. So,
but Rocket Sanders went back to looking like 2022 Rocket, and that is a problem for pretty much every team on South Carolina's schedule this year. The Gamecock crowd was rowdy. The teams were loose with the football, and I mean turnovers. The flags were flying. It was a perfect noon game for a game that I did not have any stake in.
Oh yeah, for sure. The back and forth, the overcoming a huge deficit to make it a game. It has everything you want in a college football game. Absolutely everything.
And I believe during the game they said the stat of this is LSU's largest comeback victory since the 70s.
Insane. Brian Kelly is has got this team so inconsistent, but like the highs and lows are insane.
As you will hear from the first calling the dogs voicemail.
Yeah.
The LSU offensive line gave up their first sacks of the season, giving up 2 sacks and 6 tackles for loss. The LSU defense still not good, giving up 243 rushing yards, 143 of those to Rocket Sanders and 86 to Lenore Sellers, who, by the way, Lenore Sellers only played like 5 minutes of the third quarter, and that was his extent in the game. Still got 86 rushing yards. And before he went out, he was 9 of 16 for 113 yards and an interception. He did have 2 rushing touchdowns before he went out. South Carolina seems weak on their defense on the outside and with a power running game. If you were able to run the ball right at them, they didn't seem able to stop it as well. But if you're trying to do some like outside gap scheme, tackle for loss.
Yep.
If you're trying to run your quarterback, tackle for loss.
Well, if Georgia does run into them in the SEC championship game, we're good on that front.
Yeah, Bussin' Us had 3 carries for negative 25 yards. That's pretty awful.
Yeah, it's not great.
South Carolina is elite at safety coverage, but if you can get a quick pass into the flat or a deep pass onto the sideline without a safety over there, they're extremely vulnerable. That's kind of where LSU made their money. And with their defensive line, I'm not sure how many teams are going to have the opportunity to throw deep shots, but still vulnerable. In this game, LSU found a guy at running back. I hope he stays healthy, and that is truly not sarcasm because all of their guys that they have found over the last 2 years have somehow gotten hurt. But this running back does have the most just Duke University frat name I've ever heard in my life, Caden Durham. Going 11 carries for 98 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, his name sounds like the prototypical 6-string white walk-on running back at Georgia, but dude is good.
Great. He was the only guy that could move the ball for the middle half of that game.
Mm-hmm.
This game was wild, but at the end of the day, Shane Beamer found a way to choke, even with playing some top-tier Beamer ball, 2 block kicks, 1 return for a touchdown.
Still wasn't enough.
I will say, my last comment on this game. The South Carolina fans that are upset that a pick six got called back for a horse collar tackle and are saying that it was not a horse collar tackle. I know, look, I lived in Columbia for a little while. I know reading is difficult. Listening is more difficult for you guys. But it is no longer just your hand inside of the collar pulling backwards. That is no longer what a horse collar tackle is. It is anywhere from the front of the shoulders around to the back, including the nameplate, suddenly jerked backwards or to the side. Because head injuries are bad.
Yep.
So that was quite literally a textbook horse collar tackle for the revised edition of the textbook. So, yes, that was a flag. You did not get the pick six because the referees made the right call. Did they make right calls all game? Absolutely not. There were a ton of questionable calls. But that one was correct, and that's the one that Gamecocks are most mad about.
Yeah. So they should be mad about Alex Herrera pulling a Noah Ruggles there at the end of the game. I wonder what
his was a lot closer than Ruggles.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I wonder what Shane Beamer would think about his execution. I bet he'd be in favor of it. But I've got to be honest. South Carolina did prove me wrong quite a bit. Thursday or Friday, if you listen, I told everyone I didn't really think a whole lot of this South Carolina team. I thought there'd be big ups and big downs. I guess kind of like their opponent. But I thought it'd be one of those games where LSU has a pretty comfortable 2-score lead throughout the second half. And that did not happen. And I do have to give South Carolina props for coming out and getting off to that hot start. But sadly, we learned, as this is the second case I can think of where this has happened, that Beamer ball means getting out to a sizable lead against a higher ranked opponent and then completely choking the game. They did that against Georgia last year. They've done that against LSU this year. Seems to be a theme.
Yes. But, I mean, we already talked about it. If Norris stays healthy,
Yeah,
Norris stays healthy,
that is a big feat. Yeah, it's not as simple as Beamer choked. There were other factors.
Yeah, and I will say, if I say Lenore Seller's name wrong, that is not ignorance. That is, we record these episodes on Sundays. You know what else I do most Sundays? Watch Formula One. Who my current favorite driver's name is Lando Norris instead of La Norris. So sometimes I will say Norris on accident.
Understandable. And, basically, La Norris is just Spanish for the Norris. So you're not wrong necessarily if you say that.
He is the Norris. Judging by the fact that Lando Norris has more wins this year than South Carolina, I would say he's incorrect.
He's the Norris.
To be fair, he only has 2 wins this year. Still more than
Still
one.
more?
No. South Carolina has 2 wins.
Has 2, you're right, yeah.
Damn, they're tied.
We treat that Old Dominion game as a loss, but they did win it.
They sure tried to lose. All right, so we got some random game notes, and I know we're running a little bit longer than we normally do, but this week was just wild.
It was a lot.
There's so much to talk about. Oklahoma struggled to put away Tulane they struggled to put away an inferior opponent for the second time in 2 weeks. Oklahoma is still, after having a fairly good day on third downs on Saturday, 109th in the country at third down conversion percentage at 31%. So that matchup next week is looking real bad for the Sooners.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Oklahoma did cover by half a point.
I'm aware.
Which I'm very salty about.
Yep. Because I had money on them, and then Tulane driving late, I was like, oh, they're getting in field goal range. It's like, the coach knows. There's sports casinos in New Orleans. Like,
yeah, surely he's got to be playing for the cover.
And then they throw an interception. I was like, oh, shit.
Yeah. There goes $50. All right.
Going to the Florida game, Mertz is still the more polished quarterback in Gainesville, and had he not gotten dinged up early, they had fighting chance in that game. SEC Nation home teams are still 0-6 in their last 6 games.
SEC Nation, Tuscaloosa in a couple of weeks looks mighty nice. Just throwing that out there.
Crossed. Hey, and that Georgia game, Georgia in Austin will be their first opportunity for an SEC game in Austin.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That looks pretty nice too, doesn't it?
It does. Let's go back-to-back Georgia road games, guys.
Yeah.
The Vandy hype train is over, losing to Georgia State 36-32. They couldn't stop the Del McGee and Jim Chaney rushing or passing attack. I will say Georgia State now has, over the last 7 years, beaten Tennessee and Vanderbilt, owning the state of Tennessee.
Absolutely. This game, I didn't want to say it earlier, I felt like a proud father watching Brock Vandegrift during this Kentucky game play so well. That's how I felt about Georgia State coming in there with Del McGee and Jim Chaney winning this football game. Just like, look at my guys go. I love both of those guys. Really happy they're having success.
Yeah, absolutely. Hugh Freeze found his quarterback on the Plains. Hank Brown went 17-25 for 235 yards and 4 touchdowns against New Mexico. We understand that New Mexico is bad.
But Peyton Thorne is worse.
Yep. 0-3 on the season with losses to no good teams, including Montana State FCS in week 0. But Peyton Thorne is not coming close to those stats against a good high school team. Like, if you put Hoover High School on the field against Peyton Thorne with this Auburn offense, Peyton Thorne is not getting 17-25 for 235 yards and 4 touchdowns. He's just not.
Yeah. I was going to say whoever put Peyton Thorne and Robbie Ashford on the same roster as the 2 quarterback options last year for Auburn needs to be fired. Which I know they just lost, what's his face?
The coup of Harsin?
Yeah, Brian Harsin. Thank you. I couldn't think of his name, but nobody else will be able to in 10 years either.
Hey, Florida's supposed to be looking for a new coach soon. I heard Brian Harson's a good offensive mind.
Ah, there we go. You can get them on the cheap. That's what they love.
Talking about struggling teams, Michigan struggling another game. In a game they won 28-18. Their starter Davis Warren threw 3 interceptions before they threw Orgy onto the field.
Yeah. Always good to have an orgy on the field, but it didn't help much in this case.
He threw
But,
less interceptions and
well,
the same amount of touchdowns.
Okay. I mean that's a bonus. Yeah, stay tuned for my picks later in the week for what I think about Michigan. But I like how we have 3 teams who either played for a national championship or tried to stake a claim for one, and all of them are just riding the struggle bus.
Yeah. So last game that I have notes about, the Mizzou BC game was just as good as I hoped it would be. Mizzou is legit, and BC kept it close without giving up a ton of points. I don't think BC should have dropped from the AP poll. I really don't.
No.
You're playing the
I
number
hope
6 team in the country. You lose by 6 points. And your quarterback threw a touchdown where he dropped the snap, picked it up on the run, and threw a dart to the sideline where your dude took off for 50 yards.
Yeah, I'm sure these guys will be back in the poll because they are for real. I'd kind of doubted them a little bit, thinking we were just kind of giving them the treatment because they beat Florida State, but so did everybody else. But they're good and they will be back. ACC again looking a little more wide open this year than we previously expected.
Absolutely. All right.
Yeah.
I know you've got some notes here.
Yeah, speaking of Florida State, I hate to say I told you so. I cannot help but revel in the joy of Florida State losing yet another game. And I've said it again. I've already said it a few days ago, so I won't say it again. But losers' mentalities will make you lose football games. Florida State is now 0-4 since crying like a bunch of toddlers at the end of last season. And it's only going to continue until they come out and say, okay, yeah, Georgia beat us. We didn't deserve a spot in the playoff. One other thing I wanted to talk about, apparently Brandon Buckhalter from UAB, he's doing well. He made the trip home with the team after that really scary looking hit. And that scary looking play from Xavier Sori. Got to be good news from Xavier Sori. He went back with the team. He seems like he's going to be fine. And I wanted to talk about this, and not to make things too serious, but I was there when the Devin Gales situation happened in the stadium, and it's not a good thing that happened. So please don't take what I'm about to say as that, because it's a horrible tragedy when somebody loses the thing that they love the most and gets these kinds of horrible injuries. So again, glad Buckhalter's doing okay. You do kind of see the best of humanity sometimes in these moments, though, really coming through. And you see it a lot in sports, football in particular, because you live with this idea that, like, this guy standing across from me might be my adversary right now, but if shit hits the fan, he is still a human being, and we're in this together. And I think that's a lesson a lot of us really need to learn when watching sports. A lot of times, if you do sports right, they can teach you things. This needs to be one of them. That, I'm not going to get into a ton of specifics about this, so I don't spend too much time on it. But we could all do a little bit better about seeing the human being across from us in life and recognizing, hey, we're still in this together. You are my brother.
No, I agree 100%. And if you haven't seen the situation between UAB and Arkansas, because I'm not sure how many people were tuned into that game, I'll describe it a little bit, because it by no means was intentional from anyone involved.
Mm-hmm.
Xavier Sori was going, the running back made a cut. As Xavier Sori's running past him, he sticks his hand out. Glove gets caught in the guy's helmet. The glove comes up, or the helmet comes off with Xavier Sori's glove. Like, he did not grab the face mask.
Mm-mm.
It just came off with his glove.
That's just the physics of what happened in that moment. Yeah.
And he was already being tackled by 2 other Arkansas players. And he just fell and got dumped on his head with no helmet on, with 2 grown men on top of him. And it was terrifying.
Yeah.
For everyone involved. And but I am extremely glad to hear he's okay. It obviously hit Xavier Sori extremely hard, because he did not play like himself for the rest of that game. But cannot express how happy I am that he is okay, because that was terrifying, and I couldn't imagine being the family member of somebody in that situation.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, seemed like some good sportsmanship was showed on both ends when that situation happened. And now we get to talk about some examples of the opposite of that.
Oh, phenomenal segue, because I was trying to figure it out. So we're starting a new segment. I will say it's mainly about two specific teams, but any team that fits will get the treatment.
Yeah.
And the new segment, some head coaches incite trash. Abbreviated, that is shit.
Yeah. And we will be lovingly calling these coaches pieces of shit.
Fair. Tennessee is pulling a trashier version of what Ole Miss has done this year, doing onside kicks up 30-plus points. Ole Miss is at least playing three quarterbacks and just running the same offense with their backups. In the 70-point blowouts, Tennessee is just keeping their starters in for too long. And to be fair to Tennessee, which I do my best to do occasionally, the team they were playing, who I don't even remember who it was right now.
Kent State, by the way.
Kent State could not stop the run. They just couldn't do it. I want to say Tennessee had two running backs close to 200 yards. So
power to them.
Yeah, but at a certain point, like, do you need to do an onside kick?
Right.
Do you need to attempt passes in the fourth quarter when you're up 60 points?
Yeah, and doesn't make any sense to me to do something like that again. Just not what you want to do if you're a good sport. It's the actions of somebody who isn't confident that his team is going to have a shot at his conference championship and wants to put up some style points for the playoff. And if you are really confident in your team, which, I mean, they've got a good team.
They do.
All you got to do is win the games in front of you, and you're in. Focus on that. This style points garbage, you don't need it anymore.
It's not necessary.
Exactly. No, it's not like it's a BCS system where you're going to have some computer tell you if you're one of the two best teams. Like, just win your games, and you'll be good. Obviously, Josh Heupel isn't very confident that he can do that.
Yeah. And then Colorado. I think they're arguably the trashiest program in college football right now. Being up 28-9 late in the fourth quarter and still throwing the ball to pad stats, with already having over 100 yards rushing, so it's not like they struggled to run the ball. They could have ran the ball for every single down once they got the ball back, because they were throwing passes less than 2 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, up 28-9. And then Shadur is he's about to get roasted.
He as he deserves to be, because you quit a game early last week, publicly trash your offensive line, say they're the reason that you threw the bad passes, and then once you beat a Mountain West team, I mean, you saw he brought him to the podium.
Well, he brought him to the podium, but I want to point out he said that the offensive line is the reason they lost against Nebraska, which your defense not doing shit isn't either, but oh wait, your dad's in charge of the defense and your brother plays on it, so you're not going to talk bad about them. But the offensive line didn't get you to throw out routes 5 yards inside where there was a linebacker waiting.
Yeah. I guess dude was just so excited about his theme song playing.
Yeah. And then also, Shadur Sanders, after the game against Colorado State, the quarterback for Colorado State comes up to him, tries to shake his hand, and Shadur points at him and says, "Fuck you, I saw you talking shit on Instagram. Get on over there," and is making hand gestures at him. Buddy, I know your dad has you convinced you are the best player to ever grace a football field, but I can promise you, every time you do something like that, you're dropping in the draft boards. Every time you do something like that, if you do see an NFL field for a real-life game, the defense is hitting you harder.
Yeah. And make no mistake, you're a very talented quarterback. I know you're listening. But let's be real. Right now, you're not worthy to hold Lamar Jackson's jockstrap. That's just where you are right now. Sorry about it. You got to earn that. And you didn't. I keep seeing people online saying, well, that's just a rivalry game. I don't know why we expect people in rivalry games not to act like they don't like each other. You could have the worst Dan Mullen version of Florida or the worst Steve Spurrier version of Florida playing against Georgia in a tough game. They're shaking hands after the game. I don't care what was said beforehand. Chauncey Gardner shook hands with Jake Fromm after the game beforehand. He was like, well, anybody can throw a slant pass. Trash talk's part of the rivalry, but the human being across from you is part of the game.
Yeah. Yeah. No, here's the thing. Nobody respects somebody that goes out of their way to disrespect other people when this person's giving out an olive branch.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can not be friends with you online, and then if I walk up to you in person and say, hey man, good game, you played great, and you say fuck you, maybe I got some anger issues, but I got throwing gloves on. They'll protect me enough.
Yeah. I'm with you. Just classless in response to a guy who was trying to do the right and honorable thing after a loss.
Yeah, and I mean, they talk about character all the time in NFL meetings. Like, for example, the Giants draft board got leaked after the draft this year, and they color-coded guys and had signs of where they would be and where they are due to character issues. So
it matters.
It matters quite a bit. So that is going to do it for this episode of the Nothing Finer podcast. We will be back 2 more times this week. Hopefully the schedule works out a little bit better this week. Excited for the bye week, excited to get healthy, excited to not be nervous about a Georgia game, just be able to watch football on Saturday. Follow us on social media if you haven't already. You know where to find us. I don't.
It's if you're on YouTube, it's in the frame, and you saw my nice visual gag earlier. If you're on YouTube, so thanks for that. If you're not, listen to last week's show, and you'll find all the links.
But as always, guys, remember there is nothing finer in the land
than a drunk, obnoxious Georgia fan.